The oldest and strongest human emotion is fear, and the oldest and strongest type of fear is trepidation of the unknown. When we were children, our parents told us that monsters didn't exist, but we were sure that something was lurking under the bed or in the closet. Fear sees, even if our eyes are closed. Welcome to the realm of the arcane. My name is Lon Strickler. Join me as I examine unexplained creatures, strange manifestations, and remarkable realities. Imagine this next hour as a voyage of discovery to strange lands, seeking not for new territory, but for new knowledge of the supernatural. Come on board as we begin this adventure together. Hey folks, good evening and welcome to another episode of Arcane Radio. I am your host, Lon Strickler, and I thank you for joining me here on the Paranormal King Radio Network. Now, listeners can show their support for Arcane Radio by becoming a patron. Simply go to Phantoms of Monsters at phantomsofmonsters.com and click the Podbean patron banner. For only $1 per month, you can not only help cover the show's operating costs, but you'll receive a variety of rewards which are listed on our patron site. I want to thank the new Arcane Radio patrons for their support. They're Tara13, Paul Lucas, Ash Stalton 7, and I Fear Not. Now, before I introduce my guest, I want to mention an account I recently received. This gentleman, who I'll go by WR, he said, I was camping in the Shenandoah Mountains in Rockingham County, Virginia last October 2017. He said it was nice fall weather, so I decided to go out for the weekend. When I arrived, a local ranger pointed out a hiking trail for me to follow. After a hike over the mountain, there was a nice area of flat ground near a stream that was perfect for camping. I hiked a few miles to get to the bottom of the trail. I set up camp, ate dinner, and crawled into my tent. Now, around 12:30 a.m., I heard a noise outside my tent that literally scared the hell out of me. I sat upright and listened to the sounds. Soon after, I hear rocks falling around the outside of the tent. By the direction in which the rocks fell, I figured that someone was throwing rocks downhill from the mountain, but that was over 100 yards away. I slowly crawled out of the tent and peered out into the darkness. The area was extremely dark, and I could barely see my own hands in front of my face. Then suddenly I heard heavy footsteps nearby, which were getting closer. I scrambled back into the tent and reached into my pack in order to grab my .40. I pointed a gun at the ground in the opposite direction of the footsteps and then let off a round. The footsteps stopped, but I did hear a faint rustling sound going away from me. I quickly reached into the tent and grabbed my sleeping bag. I found a nearby tree and propped myself against it. The Magnum still in my hand, I dozed on and off, frightened of what had happened earlier. It started to become light, but my nerves were still on edge. I didn't wait around long enough to take down the tent. I had at least a 2-hour hike ahead of me and wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. I started my way up the trail. It was rocky and a slight incline in the beginning. I was about an hour up the mountain when I heard the same strange noises I had heard the night before. I picked up my pace until I reached the peak. As I made my way to the top, I saw that there was another lower peak on my left, around 150 yards away. There stood a hairy human-like figure looking directly at me. I knew that the creature was a Bigfoot. It was massive, at least 8 foot in height. I was so scared I started to run. At the same time, the beast let out a terrible scream that echoed in the valley below. It didn't attempt to follow, but continued to scream. And to this day, I can still hear that scream. It sounded like a low growl at first, then continued into a high-pitched shrill, becoming a long, sustained howling. It most likely wanted me to leave its territory, according to what I've read. It was probably hunting at night and was upset that I had set up camp. He told me, he said it was the first person I had shared his account with, and he doubts that he'll go into the wilderness again at night. Now, there have been other documented incidents with Bigfoot in the Shenandoah National Park. That backcountry has a decent population of black bear, coyote, bobcat as well. This area isn't really that far from the George Washington National Forest, which has had some fairly harrowing encounters reported over the years. So we're just glad that WR got out of there okay. So let's get started. Tonight's guest, Amy Major, is a psychic, rescue medium, and author. Amy has been a successful medium and healer in the New England area for 17 years, conducting many spirit investigations and rescues. Always interested in her development, Amy has studied under some of the best mediums in the area, as well as specialized schools focusing on psychic and medium abilities. Amy is a spiritualist and active member of the Church of Spiritual Life in Derry, New Hampshire for over 12 years, where she provides mediumship and gallery readings. Her first book, Toward the Light, Rescuing Spirits, Trapped Souls, and Earthbound Ghosts, has gained popularity throughout the spiritual and paranormal communities. Her newest book is Light the Way, a guide to becoming a rescue medium. Amy's website can be found at www.amymajor.com. So, Amy, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a while since we talked. I think I had you on the show with Sean and I maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think 2015. So, yeah, oh my gosh, 3 years ago. Yeah.
Well, you decided to write another book, and I'll tell you, it's a great book. It's got a lot in there, a lot of stuff that is very helpful to rescue mediums and light workers alike. It's very much more detailed than your first book. You can really tell the progress you made over the years.
Thank you. And Toward the Light was really kind of a generalization to explain to those who don't really know much about earthbound spirits or spirit rescue at all, and kind of give a brief synopsis of what's going on and explain a little things in depth to them as why certain things happen. But Light the Way was intended to be more of a field guide for those who are mediums or sensitives or paranormal investigators that are really looking to help and advance their work in rescue or any type of work with earthbound spirits. And it gives them sort of that guidelines and outlook on how to actually become a rescue medium and do this work out in the field. So 2 different types of books. They definitely have the similarities of talking about earthbound spirits. One is supposed to more be about education to the general public, whereas the second book, Light the Way, is more of, like I said, the field guide for those who want to learn more. I can't tell you how many people would come to me like, teach me what you know. And so I'm like, okay, here you go.
I get the same thing. I really do. It's interesting. When people have problems with earthbounds, it tends to be a point where you got to explain to them what's really going on first of all, because they have no understanding of what it is. So the book really does help in doing that. Now, can you tell the listeners a bit more about yourself, how you became interested in rescue mediumship?
Oh, sure. Honestly, I have people ask me that all the time, and I always tell them I went into rescue mediumship kicking and screaming. I didn't want anything to do with that, actually. Most people are thrilled to get into this type of work. As for me, it was thrown into my lap all the time, even though I pushed it away to the point where I shut down being a medium, didn't want anything to do with it for a year or two. But because I've been doing this work technically for 20 years, but I stopped for a year or two, or, another year later after I had a baby. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do it anymore because all I'm getting are earthbound spirits. I'm not getting any of the good stuff. And I don't want to do this anymore. And it's like I didn't have a choice because every time I'd open up to mediumship, I would immediately be surrounded by earthbound spirits. And then everyone that would be in my development circle, they're like, what's wrong with you? Why do you keep bringing all these bad spirits in? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like a magnet for these things. And no one could explain it to me. So I connected in with my guides, and I'm like, what's going on? Why are there all these spirits around me? And they started explaining rescue mediumship to me. And they said, you came in specifically to be a rescue medium. And not only that, but you came in to educate people or the general public about rescue mediumship. So they're like, buckle up, you're in for a ride, it's not going to be fun. And they were right. It was not fun at all. I have to say training as a rescue medium is much harder, much more intense than training as a psychic medium or a spiritual medium. Very different training involved with that. So, and many people's like, oh, why did you choose rescue? I'm like, no, I didn't choose it. It chose me. So here I am today, now training other people how to do it. And whenever I do train other people, I kind of sit down with them like, okay, I'm going to tell you what it's all about. I'm going to give you a chance to walk away now before you get in depth with this, because it's not for every medium. It's for a select few that have a little bit thicker skin, that can handle the tougher, more, I don't want to say negative, but the heavier, darker side of the spiritual world. So not many people are definitely geared towards rescue work. And there's an awful lot of mediums out there that won't even acknowledge rescue work. They want nothing to do with it, won't even say that it's real. They say earthbounds don't exist, but we're faking everything. So it's going to be hard, not only because you're dealing with heavy energy, but you're also dealing with the animosity and the negative vibes that you're getting from the psychic and spiritual community too. So it's been a hard ride, but I got to tell you, it was totally worth it.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're talking about. Now there's one phenomenon that does seem to happen a lot when you're involved with people who swear that they're attracting energy and spirit energy. And most of these people are either beacons or someone who is actually a physical medium, and these spirits just do seem to attract to them. And it's hard to explain to them the process or what's going on.
Oh, yeah, because there are mediums, and I always kind of try to explain this to people. Just because someone says they're a medium or they're a sensitive does not mean that they all have the same vibrational frequency.
Exactly.
Every medium is different, just like every artist is different. We all have a special style and our own unique vibration. And within that vibration, we attract different spirits according to the vibrational frequency that they connect to and they can see. So a majority of mediums can connect to various levels of frequencies in between, or some only connect to those of a higher vibration. And those are the ones that usually say that earthbound spirits don't exist because they've never connected to them. But then I kind of say, well, you want everyone to believe in mediumship, but you're not willing to believe in other things yourself. I'm like, to me, that doesn't feel right. So like, I believe anything is possible. Just like I've never seen Bigfoot, but is it possible? Absolutely. Other people have. So I'm going to leave myself open for anything's possible.
Well, this is what I like about your book, because it has a lot in there that you don't see in most spirit rescue titles. And in fact, I was really surprised on how much was actually covered. Now, what's the reason why you wrote this? Did you just want to help others?
Absolutely. I keep telling people, when I was developing as a rescue medium, I didn't have anyone to talk to. I had like maybe 2 other mediums that would give me information once in a while, but I didn't have any real teachers for rescue work. Everything I did came from the other side, and I kind of had to go and learn by trial and error, which was very difficult. And I kept saying, I wish I had somebody write a book and tell me what to do. I would go to the bookstores and see nothing, absolutely nothing on spirit rescue or rescue mediumship or how to help earthbound spirits. They would all just be stories that some mediums would say. I'm like, okay, well, how can I learn through a story? I need someone to tell me how to do this. And there was nothing out there. So, over the years, I'm like, you know what? I've been doing this long enough. I think I am qualified to get this information out. I want to help other mediums or other sensitives out there to have this information so they don't have to go through what I went through. They can have this field guide. They can have some sort of knowledge to help them out. So they say, yes, what I'm doing, what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling, it's real because he's got it written right here in the book, and I have something to compare my experiences to. So it's just really to kind of give people a leg up on their development, something I didn't have.
Now, like you said earlier, detection of vibration is an important part of spirit rescue. Now, can you kind of give a thumbnail description of how that can be done?
On doing what? On changing
how
the frequency?
Detecting vibration.
Oh, that's a hard one because it's like I'm a clairsentient. So when I walk into a room or when I go into a space, I'm picking up on all energy. And the way that I pick up on energy is it's kind of like radar. I sense and feel the vibrational frequencies, the difference of energy when I walk into a room. It's kind of like listening to music. You hear the notes of a bass guitar, and it's very low vibration, and you can kind of it goes a little bit slower. It's got a deeper tone to it. Well, that's how energy feels to me. And then I walk in, someone's playing acoustic guitar or electric guitar, and those notes are higher. They have a higher pitch. They have a higher tone, and that's what the energy feels like to me when I'm connected into the other side. The vibration feels much higher. So depending on the frequency of what I'm picking up and feeling, I'll know what their awareness is, who they are, what they're looking for, based on moving into their energy and acquiring the information based on their frequency.
You posted something on your Facebook today that I found very interesting. You were mentioning that you see blue color when you notice an earthbound.
Yes.
It's interesting. I'm a clairsentient, so I see. I don't necessarily see it, but it's more I see it or sense it in my mind's eye. But I sense pink and foam green, seafoam green, which is, I don't know, I think it's bizarre. But when I do sense the colors, I know I'm around spirit energy.
Right.
I guess you've heard all kinds of combination of colors, haven't you?
Yes. I mean, because when you're thinking about it, in my mind's eye, I see all the colors of the rainbow. In my mind's eye, it's what we call our psychic third eye. But when I see them with my physical eye, like, I'm just open my eyes, I look around, and there's a spirit standing in front of me. It's not in my mind. It's out physically in front of me. I always see them, and they look blue. They kind of look almost like a projection, kind of see-through, but they're all glowing like this very light or grayish blue color. And it's been happening to me throughout the years, and they're always blue. And then when I see a soul leaving the body, it's always a very deep, dark electric blue. So I'm just kind of asking people, like, does anybody else experience any other colors of spirits? Not in your mind's eye per se of through meditation or anything, but like to see them physically, because I kind of wonder, I've been wondering, asking the spirit world, what colors are spirits technically? Are they different colors? Because I know on the other side, they have different colors based on their frequency. But when we see them out here in the physical world, what does that represent? And I haven't been able to find that answer yet.
Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting question, because the only time I have been able to see colors physically are auras, but it's not necessarily a spirit. It's mostly just a physical person. And I have seen the aura color, but as far as a spirit or an earthbound, I don't remember ever being able to actually physically see a color like that. So, all mine is done intuitively or through my mind's eye. But it was an interesting question, and I don't know. I mean, that's something that I'm going to keep an eye on and see what others say about that.
I definitely, because I think we all need to start working together and working with the spirit world. I think now that we're more accustomed to believing, or other people are more accustomed to believing that we can connect in the spirit world, well, let's go the distance now. Let's start asking questions. Let's start asking why. What's happening? Why is this happening? What's it like on the other side? What can we learn from this? And I always get the same answer. You'll figure it out when you get here. Well, no, I'm too curious. I'm not going to give up. So I'm going to keep trying to search for those answers.
It is difficult to talk to people about that. I don't know. I have a few psychic friends, and we talk about these things. And but everybody's different. Like you said, I don't know. It's kind of hard to kind of feed off somebody's technique to see how they do it, and to learn. I mean, it for the most part, it's all natural, and it's something that you're given, and you do with what you got,
Well, true. But then there's also a lot of classes out there that teaches you how to connect to the spirit world and how to messages and what's the structure, how to raise your vibration. So there are certain guidelines and certain structures too, connecting in with the spirit world. They're not going to tell you what to physically or what to see, but they are going to tell you what to look for. And the same thing with the rescue community. I'm explaining what can happen at various things. And that's why I try to keep everything very universal and try to stay away from, certain religious figures, and to say, use whatever is right for you. Because I know there's going to be people all over the world reading this book and using these techniques, and I don't want to feed into certain religious doctrines to say you have to do it this way, and they're like, if it doesn't connect to them in that way, it's not going to make any sense. So we all have our own way of doing things, but these are the structures. This is the guidelines that you can use to formulate a way of doing it, and then allow it to kind of evolve over time into what works for you.
Now, you're a spiritualist, and I've known people who are members of the Church of Spirit, the spiritual life churches. Can you kind of explain a bit about that and what it's done for you to enhance your abilities?
Oh, sure. Well, the spiritualist churches really are a way for us to be able to express ourselves and connect to the spirit world, and also be able to connect to God in our own personal way. We believe that we all have equal responsibility of doing right in the world, doing good for each other, believing that when people leave this world through the spirit, that their identity stays the same. They don't necessarily grow wings and become angels on the other side and everyone's hunky-dory. They take with them their egos, their personalities, their likes, their dislikes. They're the same person on the other side. They may change over time, but we're still able to connect with them, obtain information. So spiritualism is really kind of a formation of belief systems that are kind of geared towards mediumship and also energy healing. We believe that we are conduits of energy that could channel healing energy, not only for ourselves, but for others as well. So we do have a normal service. We have a lot of prayers. We sing. We're not always the greatest singers, but we try. And we do have a lot of poems. We have somebody that gets up and does an inspirational lecture. And at the end, a medium will usually get up and do spirit messages at the end of every service. Oh, we also have a hands-on healing service as well. So it's an amazing service that we have. It's very interactive. It's not where you go and you just sit there and you listen and then you leave.
Right.
And you can sit in a healing chair. You can meditate. You can receive a message from spirit. So it's very active. And the spiritual church is really growing. We have so many throughout the entire country now, and overseas. There's spiritualist churches all over the world. And the funny thing is that the difference between the United States and Europe is very different when it comes to the spiritualist churches. But, equally, we all believe in God. We all believe in the connection to the other side, and we all believe that connection continues and that we all need to stay connected together here in the physical world.
Let's talk a bit about psychic and spiritual protection. Now,
Okay.
what methods do you recommend?
All of them.
All of them?
No, I just, it really varies by the type of work you're going to be doing. And I always tell people, the higher the frequency you go, the less protection you need. The lower frequency or vibration you go, the more protection you need. So it all depends on what realm you're going to connect in with.
Okay.
Now, if you're thinking about here in the physical world, the physical world can be a very nasty place sometimes, but then it can also be very beautiful, depending on your environment. I always suggest people, if you're going to do any sort of shielding, just put on a natural shield, like a bubble of energy around your body when you wake up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And at night, just do a full cleanse of your energy. Ask for an extra cleanse from your guides and angels, and thank your guides and angels for the extra protection that they provided to you. Now, if you're doing spiritual work or psychic work or paranormal work, you're going to need to probably shield up a little bit more. And I always recommend to people to put some form of energetic crust around your bubble, usually through a color or a frequency. Usually a color needs to be strong, like an indigo blue or a red or a silver, anything that you can imagine like armor around your bubble. Because everyone likes to use the white light, and I'm telling people, there's nothing that attracts to the light more than the dark. The dark is so attracted by the light. So the more of a white light bubble you put around yourself, the more darker energies you're actually going to attract to you. And people don't actually realize that. So sometimes using white light isn't always the best strategy. I would recommend something of more of a protection color. Use pink if you want to have love around you. Use red if you want to have power. Use silver if you want to have protection. So there's many different colors that you can use around you that sets the intent on what you're trying to portray out to energy. Now, if you're going to be doing rescue work and you're going to be working on the lower frequencies, you really need to call in your protective guides, your protective angels, probably your power animals, and use a little extra protection from the spiritual world on top of grounding your energy into earth, bringing in spiritual protection through your crown chakra, and realigning your energy to a frequency that's not going to be affected by the earthbound spirit. So there are many different ways of protecting yourself. Like I said, the higher frequency you go, you don't have to use as much protection. Because when you go into a meditative state and you go to a high frequency, you connect to God, you connect to your angels, there really isn't any protection needed for that. Because they're there to help you and protect you and to love you. It's only when you have to work with the lower frequencies, I would say, definitely shield up.
Do you use a lot of meditation? In other words, do you use sound or anything like that to get into a meditative state?
I usually just play, some music. When the kids aren't home and when they're at school, if I get a chance to, I'll just turn on Comcast. They have actually a Soundscapes music. It's for free. Well, not free, but it's great. And I turn that on. It's nice, relaxing, meditative music. And I'll just kind of go up and I'll raise my frequency and I'll go and I'll connect with my guides and see what they want me to know. If I don't have that, I'll go to YouTube. They have tons of meditative music for free that you can listen to, or you can buy a CD and just listen to that. A lot of people like to use like a crystal bowl or sound frequency to raise their vibration. That's fine too. It's whatever you think you're going to connect to raise your frequency. Usually I just like listening to music.
Interesting. You were talking about power animals. I started to do some shamanic journeying a couple years ago, and it's very, very interesting. I found my power animal, which was what I actually thought it was, an owl.
Awesome. I can see that.
It's one of those things. I've told several people about this, but there was a period in my life around the time before my wife passed away and my grandmother passed away, where I just kept seeing these owls. And I would see it in my mind's eye. I would see actual owls. I would see references to owls. It was going on constantly. And I was telling associates about it. I said, I saw another owl today. I heard another owl today. It's bizarre. So I decided to go ahead and start checking into shamanic journeying. Somebody had recommended it to me. And, when I went into that meditative state, that's what came up, the owl. And, I've been using that totem since then.
Did you look up the meaning behind the owl?
Yeah, I did.
What that means for your life purpose?
Yeah, it's a protective thing. It's more so a protective thing. It's more of a female type of animal, power animal. But it's, I've talked, in fact, I've talked to several people, Native American shamans and such about this. And for the most part, they're fearful of the owl. They feel it's a portent of some type of evil spirit. But I guess it's all kinds of different ways of looking at that. But it just seems so close to me. It seems to be part of me more than anything else. So it's kind of become my totem since then.
Yeah. The owl is beautiful. The owl represents knowledge, wisdom,
right?
Strength, vitality. It represents being able to see into deeper situations, that night vision, being able to see into people or see into situations and understand the purpose and the wisdom through these experiences. So the owl is a majestic creature that you should be very honored to have.
Now, you're a rescue medium, and I don't know how many of my listeners actually know what a rescue medium is. Can you kind of describe some of the techniques you use or what happens when you are involved in a rescue mediumship situation?
Sure. Most rescue mediums will never really have to go out to a paranormal situation unless they get called out with a paranormal team. They're looking for extra assistance. Mm-hmm. Most of us will actually attract these spirits when we're driving in a car, we're going to a restaurant, going shopping in the mall, or just talk with people in general when we're doing regular readings. And earthbound spirits are attracted to our unique vibration because we reside at their frequency. So we can see them, they can see us. When they do connect in with us, we then communicate with them, try to figure out why are they earthbound? Why haven't they moved into the full transition? We call it transition. And we, sometimes some spirits just want to take their time. They're just not ready to go. Therefore, I would say a rescue is not warranted. But if we do connect in with the spirit, they seem rather lost, they seem confused, they seem scared. We kind of connect in with them and find out, okay, what counseling does this spirit need? What can I do for them? What can we talk about that's going to help them get things off their chest? What's going to make them feel more at ease with the transition process? Sometimes we just need to say, I would feel really bad about the things that I did, and I just needed to let somebody know that, and I want to have some sort of forgiveness. Or I really want to tell this person I love them before I move on. So we kind of become message bearers as well. And we kind of tell the people that we're giving a reading to, and this is what they want you to know before they move on. And then we help them with the transition process. We then guide them to help them find their way to the other side. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll open up a spiritual door. Sometimes we'll bring in their guides or spiritual family and friends from the other side. We'll help walk them through the spiritual door. Sometimes it's just pointing them in the right direction, raising their frequency so they're able to see the white light on their own. So it's depending on that spirit, what they need at that time, what they're aware of, and if they're ready to go or not. We kind of cater it to that individual spirit. And from there, we help them make their final transition. So rescue medium is really connecting into spirits that are somehow stuck in between the states of transition, and we help them continue on with their journey.
Well, when I'm called into a situation like this, it's usually where there's an earthbound that's causing a bit of problems. So, and most of my work is done remotely. And like you said, you basically summon the earthbound, or you sense the earthbound, get a good feel of what's going on. A lot of times, like you said, and I don't know how many people in the audience understand what an earthbound actually is, but there's a lot of reasons why they kind of stay behind. It's either like they don't even know they're dead, or something, they feel somehow they must stay behind to watch someone. Right. There's a lot of different reasons. But there's a lot of free will involved with this also. If you cannot convince them to move on, they just are not going to move.
They're not going to go, and you can't force them either. You cannot, take away their free will at all.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard.
Is that it is, because there's so many people that are like, oh, they don't have free will in the death process. I'm like, if anything, free will should be the strongest part of the death process.
Right.
No matter where you are or who you are, what you're doing, everybody has free will. So when spirits are making that transition, like you said, depending on the situation, we're going to be able to help get them to change their awareness, because quite often it's the emotions that keep them back, keep them down, that kind of shield them from knowing what the right thing to do is.
It's hard for some people to realize how strong the life force is. When a person passes away, it's I've had people ask me, well, whatever this is that's in my home or that's affecting me, it's acting so malevolent. I said, well, a lot of times when a person passes, and they had a malevolent type of or an evil type of continence when they were alive, it's going to transition to the same thing when they pass away, unless they move on. I mean, if they don't move on, they're going to be causing some problems. And for the most part, they do it because a lot of times they just don't know if they died, especially if they died suddenly, or they just don't understand what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. Most of the spirits really aren't bad. They can carry a much denser, darker frequency because they're carrying a lot of really negative emotions. They could have been in a tragic car accident. They could have been going through a tragic breakup. They could have been shot when they were trying to leave a relationship. The situation around their death could have been very heavy and negative, therefore encasing them in that residual imprint. And you're going to think, oh my gosh, this spirit's really bad, when in fact they're not. You're just sensing all the emotions around their death, and they were somehow trapped in that vibrational frequency, keeping them from seeing the white light. But like you said, there are a lot of nasty spirits that they were, bad people in the physical world. They made their transition. They turned from the white light, and they're going to continue their spree of negative behavior in the spirit world. And unfortunately, this world, the frequency, the negativity that does happen in the world, it feeds on that. So it's just one energy feeding into another.
Now, affirmation, I know, is a big part of your work, and it's a big part of my work as well. And but how important is it overall? I mean, is it fine for a client to follow up with using affirmations or prayers?
Oh, I think affirmation and prayer should be used all the time. Affirmations are really there to help you raise your frequency and think better thoughts, not only of yourself, but of the situation. Prayers are to ask for help and to ask for guidance. And sometimes the prayers there are for the actual spirits themselves. I do a lot of prayers for spirits that are at a distance, the indirect rescues, not necessarily the direct rescues, but those who are, maybe in a different country. What you're doing is when you're saying a prayer for somebody else, you're essentially sending that prayer of energy out to that person. They can either receive it or they can deny it, depending on what their energy is ready for. But prayer is going to be helping everybody involved. Prayer and affirmations both raise your energy, which in turn help restore your energy, neutralize it, and take you to a better place so you're able to think more clearly about the situation.
Let's say you get into a specific situation where you've got to connect with a spirit. How do you do that?
How do I connect the spirit? Well, it depends on the spirit. Sometimes when I connect the spirits on the other side, it's just kind of like having a thought, a memory. Or it's kind of like just having like a daydream. And like it comes very, very quickly. And you're like, wait, what was that? Was that my mind or was that spirit? I can't really tell unless it gets more intense. With an earthbound spirit, it's kind of like walking into energy and it's like right in your face. And it wants your attention, and they're all over me. And as a clairsentient, I could sense and feel spirits sort of pressing up against me all the time. I'm trying to ignore them. It doesn't always work. But once I'm like, okay, I'm ready to talk with you. What do you want? I'll move into their energy, they'll move into my energy, and we'll kind of have an exchange of telepathy of information between us. And I'll pick apart who are they, what did they look like, what did they do for a living, how did they die, why are they not in transition, what do they need from me. So it's all just an energy transfer between the two of us. But when I first connect to an earthbound spirit, it's usually like a big weight sitting on top of me.
Wow. Well, you discuss a lot of things in this book that, like I said before, you don't see in a lot of these other spirit rescue manuals or guides. This is you've gotten into a lot of different things, and the one thing I find interesting is you talk about non-human entities.
Right.
I'm just not necessarily talking about demonic, but I'm talking about a type of entity that I seem to run into a lot, which is a possibility of a non-terrestrial or alien type entity.
Right.
Have you run into that before?
Yes. Actually, I run into those more when I'm doing attachment removals.
Is that right?
Most entities from other realms are usually here to use our bodies as hosts, not necessarily to harm us, but to learn from us and understand our humanity and understand our world. That they need our body because their frequency can't sustain itself here in the physical realm.
Exactly.
So there's many that come through these portals, these holes, these gaps in these realms, and they use us. And so you may feel very drained, you may feel tired, you may have a certain part of your body that's always sick. It just means that you may have an attachment of these entities, not necessarily negative, but from other realms. And I'm constantly pulling them out of people and sending them back to wherever they came from. And they're kind of like looking at me like, dude, I wasn't doing any harm. I'm like, well, technically you were.
Yeah.
So I feel bad because they are technically using us as a tool. But all my job is to help raise the frequency of the global consciousness.
Right.
So when I'm removing these entities from people, I'm raising the frequency of that person, which in turn, like the domino effect, raises the frequency of the area, which then raises the frequency of the earth. And that's our job, is to kind of clean out the negative or the dense energy, send them back away so we can make the final shift of our consciousness.
And I don't know how, like you said, you've run into a lot of this. It seems to me, I've been doing this now for a good while, but it seems to me that these attachments, these non-human attachments, have become much more frequent than they ever had before. And why that's going on, I don't know. But when you get a client and you tell them that, they kind of look at you like you're crazy. I mean, a non-human entity. I mean, it's not a special. No, I said, maybe once you go through the different levels of attachments for the listeners, as far as attachment up the whole way up to possession.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have the different entities, and they all have different forms.
Right.
Like you said, the entities from other realms, sometimes they'll look like worms. Sometimes they'll look like little squids with tentacles. Sometimes they'll just look like orbs coming out of a person. So it all depends on the species of entities that I see. I'll also see there are some what we call demonic entities. That's just the word that our society has given them. For me, I've been told that these are just entities or beings that have been here in the Earth's frequency longer than we have. And the Earth's frequency was much, much lower than it is now, like much lower. And so these beings, these entities, resided in this frequency for a long period of time. So they're essentially kind of coming into people, lowering our frequency, trying to protect their realm. They're trying to keep their home. And it seems like they're being very negative, and it seems very negative to us, but at the same time, they're being more of a predator, and we're the prey. So it isn't necessarily that they're evil, because there technically is no evil. You have to think of it, they're just trying to protect their territory. And I've had to pull these out of people consistently. And then we have what we call the earthbound spirits, where there's usually quite a few in people. They like to call that the hiding zone. when they're not trying to do the transition, they're trying to hide from their guides or angels. It doesn't work, obviously. So it's just the game of hide and seek for a while until their guides bring that host to me and I help the spirit transition. There are all sorts of entities. There are actually manifested entities. Therefore, your own thought transfers, your emotions, your torment that's manifested over time can seem like its own separate entity. Rather, it's your own energy that's changed over time due to its denseness. And then we have what we call the projections. So when you have a very traumatic situation that's happened in your life that you've buried deep down into your subconscious, over time it builds because it feeds off of all the negative stuff that's happened to you. And it, what we call, projects out of your subconscious in forms of hallucinations, nightmares, energy draining, headaches, nausea, all these symptoms that you're having, and people thinking, oh, I'm attacked by a spirit, when really they're not. It's just a projection of their own torment or pain that no longer wants to stay embedded into the subconscious. So you never know what you're going to get when you're doing an attachment removal. That's why I call it an investigation. That needs to take place, where you move into the energy of the host and kind of figure it out from there.
Yeah, thought forms are the ones that kind of get me. They're hard to explain to people. Basically, it's the same thing that a poltergeist really is. It's something that somebody that is there, a human that's actually a living person, can project, kind of develop through their thoughts. Right. Like you say, we hear a lot of times about kids who are going through puberty for whatever reason. They project these thought forms. They manifest into something bigger. Right. And I've always found, and it's when you talk to people about it, you talk to actually the person or the family where it's happening, that it's not something that I can necessarily help you remove. It's gonna take me to teach that person how to control it, to actually stop the activity.
Right. Well, it might be beneficial to start dissipating the energy a little bit at a time.
Right.
Whereas you try to get down to the reason why they're projecting this out. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it happens a lot during puberty, but sometimes it happens a lot when the karmic connection has reached a peak, such as there could have been a past life and something traumatic happened at, like, say, the age of 15, and now they're in this life at the age of 15. The soul, the karmic connection of the soul, remembers and is projecting out this negativity because it's afraid of making the same mistake or having that karmic connection again. Mm-hmm. So we bring these thought forms in with us in our souls, embedded into our karmic field, and then our souls are remembering things and therefore projecting out from us. We don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
But, and these energies can be dissipated.
There's a term that kind of gets thrown around a lot in the paranormal world. It's residual energy, as opposed to spiritual energy. Why don't you how about describing the difference for the listeners, please?
Oh, sure. When I kind of talk about residual energy, I like to tell people, think of residue. It's something that's left behind after an event. So think about it like a snail crawling across a table, and it leaves its residue there. So the snail's been there, even though it's not there anymore. It's left its energy on the table. Kind of gross. But the same thing with energy. When something traumatic or forceful happens in a space, it can leave a mark behind in the auric field of the earth or in the space. We all project energy out all the time, so therefore we have a circulation of energy around us at all times. So when something negative or something forceful happens, it feeds into that energy like an imprint, like a hand slap into the energy around you. So when you walk into a space, you can see that projection or that energy that created that imprint over and over and over again, kind of like a record player playing over and over and over again. I'm dating myself here, the record player. But when you see that over and over again, it's like, okay, is this a spirit? Is this spiritual energy, or is this residual energy? And I always tell people, you got to kind of move into the energy or vibration and see, does it respond to you? And that's how I can always tell if it's spirit energy or residual energy. Residual won't respond to you. You're just moving into it, seeing the same happen over and over and over again. There's no true identity or intelligence behind it. It's just a leftover mark of a situation. And that's why we call it residual. It's left behind. Where the spirit energy is an intelligence behind it, is a part of the soul that's left behind that will respond to you, just like anybody else.
All right. You know, in what I do, or what I, is not only when I do spiritual work or rescue work, even in the cryptid world, we talk about vortexes or doorways, gateways opening up. Spiritual gateways are a bit different. Can you explain what a spiritual doorway is?
Oh, sure. With what I know it can differ around the spiritual community. That I like to think of as cracks or holes or gaps in the different frequencies or the different realms. And what happens is sometimes our frequency will shift so quickly that we create this crack or hole in the two frequencies in the two realms together, therefore leaving a gap or a tunnel of energy that energy can flow in and out of depending on the intent of the energy flowing through. A vortex is the actual movement of energy through a spiritual door, kind of like a tornado going through. It's the movement of moving in a certain direction. Now, we have different spiritual doors all around the area. I know people think, oh, ley lines can create spiritual doors. They can, because you have two different frequencies overlapping each other, therefore creating a crack in different realms, therefore opening up spiritual doors. And we have quite a few of them. Churches have a lot of spiritual doors. They're necessarily on a more positive note, because when you're praying all the time, you're necessarily opening up a doorway to the spiritual world. If you're going to be in a cemetery, that's going to have a spiritual door. If you're in a battle, if you're in a place where there was a war, where there's lots of death, more likely there would be a spiritual door open that sometimes can be closed, sometimes can't be, depending on the situation. And then we also have the spiritual doors that we call elementals can open and close, depending on what's needed for the earth. So there's spiritual doors that move in an upward direction to the higher consciousness, and then there are spiritual doors that move in a lower vibration to the lower realms or to the earth realm, depending on what information or what energy is needed to come up from that space.
Now, your title of your book is Light the Way, The Guide to Becoming a Rescue Medium. Now, so if someone would come up to you and say, Amy, I'd like to become a rescue medium. I'd like to develop those abilities I think I may have, or, maybe just become a rescue medium with maybe very few abilities. What would you tell them how to start?
First thing I would do is say read the book.
Read the book.
Because it gives
Absolutely.
you a general overview of what's needed to train as a rescue medium. I would then say I do train rescue mediumship students every quarter, so once a quarter, so 3 or 4 times a year. I train people, and I do open that up for video or FaceTime. So if you live at a distance, you can still video chat in and come to my classes. I would then also say maybe connecting with a spiritualist church or psychic center in the area. Sometimes they don't say rescue, sometimes they say spirit releasement. So just ask around and say, I want to help earthbound spirits transition. I want to learn how to clear energy, close vortexes, clear out attachment removals. Who do I connect to? And they may have a resource for you in that space. The one thing I would suggest not to do is do it on your own, because like me, I had to learn the hard way. I've had over 150 attachments throughout trying to learn how to do everything on my own. That's why I came as good as I am, because I've had a lot of experience, but always connecting with somebody who can kind of walk you through it. That way you don't feel like you're losing your mind so much.
Well, that's one good thing. That's one thing about the book I really like is you talk about how to clear yourself as well.
Right.
The importance of that and the importance of grounding yourself and protecting yourself. You know, in this type of thing, you can run into a lot of problems. Psychic attacks are not unheard of. I've had it happen to me. It's not fun. And I mean, they can be mental and physical attacks. It's part of what you do, but you try to limit it as much as possible.
And it's really sad that there's people out there that do still attack others psychically, as if there's some sort of threat involved with this. But unfortunately, in the psychic community, ego can get involved if money gets involved, or business, or you feel threatened by somebody else, or just don't like the practice of what they do. And unfortunately, spells or a psychic attack or any sort of energy that threatens someone else really should never even be considered anymore. We should be above this by now.
Oh, I agree with you.
It's sad that we would even have to do it.
I absolutely agree with you. It does happen. I mean, I run into situations where I believe I've been attacked psychically by someone else. It's hard to prove, but you know, it does happen. And I you know, like you said, it's something that should be stopped completely. It doesn't help really help anybody. You know, you put out bad karma, you're going to get it back.
That's right. And if you think about it this way, those who are truly out for the spiritual experience knows it's an individual experience and should never be threatened by anybody else. When we stop trying to compare ourselves to others or live up to others' expectations, we find the true meaning of peace and enlightenment within ourselves and stop the attachment of others. We won't have to worry about these psychic attacks anymore. We realize we all have a certain spark and divinity inside each and every one of us. So there's absolutely no reason whatsoever to have any ill thoughts against anybody else and want to portray any of that energy towards anyone else anymore. It's find your inner peace and find your individual journey and stop worrying about what other people are doing.
That's an excellent comment. So how can people get in contact with you, Amy? Where can they get your book? And if they want to take a class or learn from you, how can they get in contact?
Yep, they can find my book through Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. They can also go straight to my website, amymajor.com, where they have my email link, my phone number, and they also have links to my books there. They could purchase it that way as well. I have a lot of people all over the world emailing me all the time. The only thing I do ask is that if I don't respond right away, it's because I'm busy and not that I don't care, as I do have an assistant, Bridget, that works with me quite a bit, because I have people, emailing me 2-3 times a day, and I'm like, I can only get to so many emails and do my work at the same time. But if you do have a question and you really are looking for some help, not necessarily for me to do the work for you, but if you're just looking for guidance or how to become a rescue medium or kind of give you some guidance on what the next few steps are, feel free to email me. My link's on my website. And you can also visit me on Facebook as well. Just type in Amy Major Rescue Medium, or actually it's now Spirit Rescue Specialist, and I'll be able to help you that way as well.
Amy, thanks again for joining me, and let's try to keep in contact a bit more often.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an awesome show. I wish you the best of luck with everything.
Thank you, and have a good evening.
You too.
Folks, please consider becoming an Arcane Radio patron. Your support is absolutely appreciated. Now, before I go, allow me to leave this with the listeners. Perhaps a time will come when science is able to confirm the existence of immaterial forces and realms. There's been compelling research in the field of parapsychology that points to this possibility. Yet, most people in mainstream science aren't willing to consider the implications. We can only hope that open-mindedness will eventually prevail. Good night and have a great weekend.